Welcome to Notebook Summaries. Today, we're diving into the incredible story of the island nation of Mauritius. So, have you ever wondered, how does a totally uninhabited island become a nation? I mean, a real country? That's the question we're tackling today. We're going to trace the journey of this island paradise all the way from its discovery to the complex, multicultural nation it is today.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break it down. We'll look at the early Dutch rule, then the French period, followed by the British takeover. From there, we'll see the road to independence, and finally, Mauritius as a modern republic. Let's dive right in.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. Picture this, an island paradise completely untouched by humans. Now, Arab and Portuguese sailors probably knew it was there, but it was the Dutch who decided to make the first real go of it, and that's what set everything in motion. So, the Dutch show up in 1598, land, and name the island Mauritius after one of their princes. It takes them another 40 years to actually set up a permanent settlement in 1638. But, their hold was shaky at best. They struggled with everything: cyclones, pests, drought. And by 1710, they just gave up. They abandoned the island completely. So, even though their settlement was a total bust, the Dutch left a huge mark. I mean, they gave the island its name, for one, and get this, they introduced sugarcane from Java. That one decision would shape literally everything that came next. But there's a dark side too. They logged the native ebony forests like crazy, and, tragically, they played a major role in wiping out the dodo. All right, so with the Dutch gone, the island is basically empty again, a blank slate. And that created a perfect opening for the next big player on the scene, France. In 1715, France officially claimed the island. They didn't really get things going until about 1721, but right away they renamed it Isle de France, kicking off a whole new era. Now, the person who really changed the game was Governor Mahe de la Bourdonnais. This guy was a serious builder. He took Port Louis, which was just a basic harbor, and turned it into a major naval base and shipbuilding center. I mean, some of the infrastructure he built is still standing today. He really laid the foundation. But, and this is a huge but, all of this development was powered by an absolutely brutal system. To make the sugar economy work, the French started a mass importation of enslaved people from places like Mozambique, Madagascar, and Zanzibar. This single decision would change the face of the island forever. And just look at the numbers. By the late 18th century, the population hit 49,000. Think about that. It went from basically zero to nearly 50,000 people. And this wasn't French settlers moving in. This was almost entirely because of the slave trade. 80%. Let that sink in for a second. By the late 1700s, 80% of the entire population was enslaved. That is just staggering. The whole colony was built on enslaved labor, and this is where the Mauritian Creole population has its roots. So the French legacy is huge, right? They established Port Louis as this key naval base and introduced the French language and legal code, which are still around. But they did it all on the back of a massive slave-based plantation economy, which in turn formed the foundation of the island's Creole population. Okay, so moving on, the next big chapter is all about the British. Their arrival would trigger the single biggest demographic revolution in the island's history. Things were about to get shaken up, big time. So what happened? Well, the Napoleonic Wars were raging. The Isle de France became this perfect base for French corsairs, basically pirates with government approval, to raid British ships. The British got fed up. So in 1810, they just captured the island to neutralize the threat. And one of the first things they did? They changed the name back to Mauritius. And this is where things get really interesting. In 1835, the British Empire abolishes slavery. Amazing, right? But the plantation owners still needed cheap labor. So what did they do? They got over £2 million in compensation. And then they just created a new system, indentured labor. This kicked off a huge wave of people arriving from India, completely changing the island's makeup forever. Mauritius basically became the key hub for this whole indentured labor trade. We're talking thousands upon thousands of laborers arriving from India to work in the sugar fields. It was a mass migration on a scale that's hard to even imagine, and it's the origin of the Indo-Mauritian community, which would soon become the island's majority. So, the British legacy is, well, it's complicated. They abolished slavery, which is monumental, but then they introduced the indentured labor system. They created the modern Indo-Mauritian majority,
But they also kept the French civil law and language. And importantly, they started planting the seeds for eventual self-rule. All right, so as we head into the 20th century, a new Mauritian identity starts to take shape. People are beginning to see themselves as Mauritians, not just French or British subjects or laborers from India. This is the start of the long journey towards governing themselves. And this road to freedom happened step by step. It wasn't a violent revolution. It started with things like the Mauritius Labour Party being founded in 1936 to protect workers. Then you get the first elections in 48. By 61, Britain agrees that, yeah, independence can happen. And after a key election in 67, it's official. On March 12, 1968, Mauritius becomes independent. So, after independence, Mauritius takes one final step to really define itself as a fully independent nation. And they did it on a pretty significant date. On March 12, 1992, exactly 24 years to the day after achieving independence, Mauritius officially became a republic. This meant replacing the British monarch with a Mauritian president as head of state. The journey was complete. This really gets to the heart of what Mauritius is today. It's a process of hybridization and intercultural frictions and dialogues. The poet Carl Torabuli called it coolitude. What a great word. It perfectly captures this unique identity that was forged from such a complex history of migration, slavery, and indenture. When you look at it, the story of Mauritius is just incredible. From an empty island to this complex, multicultural nation, it's a powerful reminder of how history shapes the present. And it leaves you wondering, what does the future hold for a place like this? If you found this history as fascinating as I did, definitely check out our Quick Country Histories playlist for more stories just like this. And of course, subscribe to Notebook Summaries for your next explainer. Thanks for watching.